So I'll start with you because we have seen some nice momentum building up in the local motor sector. We saw it coming through from the end of last year. Slight pullback in March, not quite as strong as February. April falling off the charts. Do you think this is a temporary blip?
I think it is a temporary blip, especially given the number of days, trading days in April, which were much lower. We expected it, I think, given the fact that a lot of customers were out of the market and there were fewer working days in April. But I think the positive thing is that on a year-on-year basis, we're still up. So which means that...
Up 19%?
Yeah,
also
I think
nice.
19%. And I think it's still an indication that the market is still positive. And we are quite positive that I think for the rest of the calendar year, the market will be much better than last year on a comparative basis.
Trevor, you could perhaps give us a global perspective. How do the trends we're seeing in South Africa at this stage measure up to the trends we're seeing in some of the other regions that you look after?
Well, it's very interesting, especially with the growing middle class here. And there was just a study published that 34% of the billion on the continent qualify now as middle class, and there's so much upside potential moving forward. So it's similar to the India economy and the Chinese economy, where more and more people now can afford to have a vehicle. Ford is offering the Figo subcompact at a very value-priced entry level, which offers more and more people, the empowerment of personal transportation. So we've upped our forecast actually for South Africa industry sales from 440,000 to 490,000 for the year, and Ford branded passenger car sales. So far, the first 4 months of this year are up 87%, so we're pretty excited.
Cyril, is this a trend that we have seen customers moving down to cheaper entry-level vehicles, particularly as we see the petrol price shooting up? We have toll roads coming in all over Johannesburg. Are we seeing customers moving to more value cars?
Yes, we have seen that. And we have seen customers moving more towards the A and B segment. And I think one of the biggest drivers is obviously affordability and all the related motoring costs, which is influencing customers to move in that direction.
Trevor, the events in Japan and in March, I mean, it's sad events, but has it played into Ford's favor? Because we do know that lots of Japanese production has been affected. Have you been able to pick up any extra deals through that?
Well, first of all, everyone at Ford Japan is okay. No one was hurt. Everybody is impacted by this. Everybody who makes cars and other appliances. There's so many suppliers based in Japan. Even if they're not tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, there's impact throughout the world. So for us, we watch it on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a part-by-part basis. Last week, for example, in our region, we had 4 plants down that pulled ahead previously scheduled.
So it has affected your production as well in Japan?
It has indeed. In fact, last week in South Africa, we were down, but this was a previously scheduled down week. So we're not looking at, how can we take advantage of this, because especially in particular, Japanese automakers are more impacted because their assembly plants are there. But really managing our day-to-day operations, and so far we've done a pretty good job of that, we think.
So any sign of perhaps lack of availability of vehicles affecting sales during the month of April, do you think?
Well, I think there could have been an impact. We have seen, particularly on the light commercial vehicles, which were marginally lower compared to the same time last year.
Down about 2% year on year?
2.5% on a year-on-year basis. And I think the supply side will be felt, particularly over the next quarter, I think, because of the crisis, as Trevor has highlighted. I think we expect there to be a bit of an impact on the supply side, and perhaps just touching on the use side as well. I mean, the used car vehicles have softened, and also supported by a marginal increase on the new side if we compare on a year-on-year basis. And I think that has been driven by price stability on the vehicle side and the type of vehicles which are being supplied to the market.
Price. How about the rand? Does the rand have any impact on the vehicles you're manufacturing in South Africa for exports?
It does somewhat, and we were just talking about that this morning. And it's of course it fluctuates. And my understanding is most of the imports here, it's a rand yen and rand euro comparison. For us, it's not as big of an impact. We're getting ready to launch the new Ranger pickup truck from our plant here in Pretoria. And there's 180 markets around the world where this will go to. So we're watching, of course, currency fluctuations and looking at what makes sense. We import the Figo, our hot-selling little Figo, from India, and we've been able to maintain a really nice entry price for that. So it's something we watch closely, but it's not having huge impact so far.
What's vehicle price inflation looking like at the moment, Cyril, particularly for cars that are being imported into South Africa? Because I should imagine it's keeping those prices low.
I think if we look at post the carbon emission tax last year, which added probably up, at around 3%. The price inflation is very low, probably around 4%, and I think that is that has helped to help the supply side as well as to ensure that customers are able to afford those vehicles. So I think the year-on-year price inflation has remained very stable and at a low base.
What are some of the obstacles perhaps you're seeing in the South African market, particularly with the manufacturing of cars for export?
Well, we see nothing but upside. I mean, there are normal challenges in production and in managing your supply chain and looking at rising inflation and labor costs. But we have invested 3 billion rand in our operations here to expand, to transform our operations. We're bringing more local suppliers in and a supplier incubation facility to help empower more local suppliers. And it's this part of the world is tremendous growth. So we look for opportunities more than we look for challenges.
How about government incentive programs? We had the MIDP, that's coming to an end pretty soon. It's being replaced by another program. Is that an incentive for manufacturers like Ford?
It is an incentive, but we'd prefer to sell our vehicles based on their value and not necessarily because there's an incentive either from the government or from the dealership. And we've tried, as part of our One Ford plan, and one of the reasons we made $2.6 billion in the first quarter, in our operations, to really bring value in our vehicles, high quality, safe, fun to drive, fuel efficient, great vehicles, especially small cars that are more popular with the rising cost of oil these days. So we'd rather sell on our own and not have to depend on any kind of incentives.
Cyril, the customer, how's the customer looking at the moment? Because we know consumer debt's still pretty high, it's about 79% of disposable income. Are you turning deals away? Are you giving more customers access to credit at WesBank?
I think our approval levels have remained stable, and despite the increase in number of credit inquiries, I think one thing that we need to take into account is that despite the increase in number of applications coming through, that increase has not been matched by quality of those applications. So, which has resulted in our approval levels remaining stable. So I think the three key factors obviously affect our approvals. Firstly, credit profiles of customers, as well as the disposable income and the affordability calculations that we have, bearing in mind that we are guided by regulation in terms of what we can lend to every customer who buys a vehicle, and those are some of the issues that influence our ability to lend and what we approve. So we do have those kind of factors affecting our business, but I think to a large extent we have remained quite stable in terms of approval levels.
And Trevor, you're pretty optimistic about Ford's sales going forward in South Africa, in the short term anyway?
Absolutely, in particular with the Ford brand. And with Ranger launching this year, increased capacity to 110,000 here in Silverton, and our engine plant in Strondale, we've increased the capacity to 220,000, and we'll be exporting those all over the region. So it's a great time to be in South Africa.
So we can expect to see more Fords on the road.
Absolutely.
Out of time, we have to leave it. Thanks both very much for coming in.